Welcome to OPC Radio Connect, the podcast that connects you with the services and programs of the Office of the People's Counsel, the independent D.C. government agency that represents the interests of electric, natural gas, water, and local phone consumers, whose mission it is to advocate, educate, and protect district utility consumers. Now, here's your host, Sandra Matavu-Fry, Director of the Office of the People's Counsel for the District of Columbia.
Hello, and welcome to OPC Radio Connect. I am Sandra Matavu-Fry, People's Counsel for the District of Columbia. Our mission at OPC is to advocate on behalf of the District of Columbia utility consumers to ensure that utilities provide safe, reliable, affordable, and environmentally sustainable utility service. We are your utility lawyer. Through a series of podcasts, we will educate and inform you about your rights, rules and regulations, important cases, and advances in technology affecting electric, natural gas, telephone, and water utility service, and most importantly, tell you how they all figure into your daily living. You will hear from OPC staff, experts, and other advocates. In today's segment, our topic is, What's Up with Water? Let me introduce my guests. Both are OPC staff members. Chandler Crumlin is the manager of OPC's new Water Services Division, and attorney Grace Soderberg is the section's assistant People's Counsel. Welcome, Grace and Chandler.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra.
Let me begin by giving listeners just a little background on how OPC became involved with DC Water. In the summer and fall of 2018, there was a loud outcry by DC Water consumers over high bills and sometimes dramatic increases in water bills. One of their chief complaints was that they did not have an effective voice before the DC Water Board, where the rates were set. Consumers were demanding to be heard. In response, members of the DC Council introduced the DC Water Consumer Protection Amendment Act of 2018. The Council passed the act on December 18, 2018. Which expanded the scope of OPC's mission. It now allowed the office to advocate on behalf of district water consumers through our complaint resolution process, and it gave us a limited role in rate hearings. The law became effective on April 11, 2019, at which time OPC formally established the OPC Water Division. We hired staff and began handling a wide range of consumer complaints, including disconnections, negotiating payment plans, and meter-related issues, among other things. In addition, we began to participate in the DC Water Board's hearings on proposed rate increases. In many respects, OPC's new role with DC Water mimics or mirrors our long-standing role and experience in representing electric, natural gas, and local phone consumers. I find that it is both an opportunity and a challenge. Chandler, let's start with you. What is your role as the manager of the new division? Please share with our listeners how OPC is carrying out its new responsibilities.
I oversee the day-to-day operations of the Water Services Division within the Office of the People's Counsel. Since the council legislation establishing our Water Services Division was approved by Congress in April 11, 2019, we've been granted limited oversight over DC Water. I do want to take a moment and say thank you. Like, part of my job was already done before I started. So I just want to say thank you, Sandra. And what I'm talking about is basically one of our major roles is to make sure that we know the areas in which we're speaking to when we're helping consumers. So our first task was to make sure that we know the laws and regulations by which DC Water is run. So that was one of our first first steps that we took to make sure that we're serving our consumers, and that was already in place when we came to OPC. That OPC had worked with the Department of Energy and the Environment and also DC Water to create a consumer bill of rights specifically for water consumers.
That was an important aspect of preparing for the new division.
Yes, and I thank you for it. For years, consumers have wanted an advocate to help with their water issues. Now we can assist with all water consumers in the district by providing a results-driven customer service experience. Upon our inception, we wanted to get the word out that OPC can help resolve water issues for DC water consumers. We launched a multi-pronged marketing campaign to get the word out. Some of our strategies included billboard advertisements that appeared on Metro buses and rails throughout the DMV, along with radio ads and on some of the most popular stations in our area. Lastly, we hit the ground running. Literally, the community outreach specialists attended local meetings and outreach functions throughout the district. In each ward, so far, we've seen positive feedback from our efforts, and I cannot wait to see the great results that we'll have this year.
Well, thank you. You're doing a great job. Grace, as Assistant People's Counsel for the Water Services Division, you are an attorney. Why is there a need for an attorney in the new division?
Well, as you noted, there is a new law that we now have statutory representation of DC water ratepayers and consumers. So we are the statutory advocate for those consumers. So we are your utility lawyer for water consumers, the same way we have been the utility lawyer for DC water, DC consumers for energy services as well for over 40 years. So what does the statutory authority mean for DC water consumers? So now OPC can represent them in rulemakings that affect all their interests. So we did that in 2019. We represented them in 2 key rulemakings. We participated in public comments and also provided oral testimony in public hearings. And beyond these rulemakings that affect all DC ratepayers and consumers, OPC also represents individual consumers. We get involved in their specific complaints and try and craft a solution to their specific complaints to result in a positive outcome. For example, in 2019, when one of those consumer complaints went to a formal process, an administrative hearing, OPC represented them in that administrative hearing, and we came to a positive result in that. And even after a positive order, when DC Water appealed that order, OPC fought back with numerous filings and continued to advocate and zealously advocate for that consumer so that we resulted in another positive order for that consumer's issues.
So that was actually a win-win for the consumer as well as for the office.
Yes, definitely, especially with OPC on your side as your utility lawyer.
Until the new law, we could only refer consumers to DC Water staff. Now we actually can independently represent them.
Correct.
Have you noticed a difference, and what has been the response of consumers to the services that we provide?
The response has been they know they have a statutory advocate. So with what has been mentioned with the Bill of Rights, on one hand, they are more informed as well. And now that they know there's a utility lawyer, they can give their interest to us, and they know we can represent them zealously.
Chandler, when a DC consumer calls asking for help because they've received either a disconnection notice or they have some question about a leak, what do we do? What action does OPC take?
Well, first, I just want to take a step back and state, like I mentioned earlier, is that with preparation, that one of the first things that we did when we were launched in April of 2019 is that our primary focus was definitely on customer service. And so we have to take a step back and realize the consumers that are contacting us at the office. And typically those are consumers who are in dire situations or extremely frustrated with their situations. Whenever you're dealing with a customer who is about to be disconnected or has been disconnected, you have to approach that with care and understanding to know where that consumer is coming from. So what we first do is that we talk to the consumer, we hear what their issue is, and that we talk with the consumer, we hear what the issue is, and that we walk through with them how we can help them resolve the issue. Often when a consumer reaches out to their service may be facing disconnection, or it may already be off. They may be facing a bill too high to pay, or that one that there certainly is an error, such as a high bill like you spoke to earlier. Once we have the consumer's description of their issue, is that what we do is that we take that information, we reach out to DC Water, and DC Water responds in turn on what the issues are that's happening on the consumer's account. With that information is that we start an investigation on the consumer's account. We review DCMR, the laws and regs, and that we basically negotiate with DC Water to say, what is the best outcome that we can have for this consumer in this particular situation? And right now we're doing this on a daily basis. And one of the things that we're doing that is really interesting, that we have one consumer that's disputing with DC Water their property line. So it's fascinating every day. Every day is something different.
Grace mentioned one success story. Do you have another?
Yes. We have plenty of success stories. I just need to pull one out of my hat. So one of our first success stories is a consumer that was in Ward 4, that she received a bill that was over $2,000 for 1 month of service. The consumer had been working with DC Water to resolve the issue, and 6 months later, after reaching no resolution, the consumer reached out to OPC, actually the week when we were first launched. And what we were able to do is determine that there was a meter error with this consumer's account. And we worked with DC Water, we walked through the process, and that we were able to get this consumer's bill adjusted back down to its normal amount. And the consumer was happy, and that was one of our first cases that I'm really proud of, and it's a success story that I know will keep going.
Great, that sounds fantastic. DC Water is an unregulated authority. Unlike PEPCO, Washington Gas, and Verizon, the local level, DC Water does not fall under the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission, or for that matter, any other regulatory authority. Grace, what is the impact of the lack of independent regulatory authority over DC Water?
Well, the District of Columbia is unique in that way. It's one of the handful of jurisdictions in this country that has no regulation over the water sector. So what that means is that DC Water is self-regulating. It's not subject to the jurisdiction or any oversight of the DC Public Service Commission. Instead, they regulate themselves. They have their own board of directors. So in terms of rates, they propose and approve their own rates, unlike the other utilities who have to go before the Public Service Commission and ask them for their approval. But even with this construct, OPC is able to be your statutory advocate. For example, in the rulemaking last year in the CAP program, which is the Customer Assistance Program 2, CAP 2, OPC filed extensive comments. We provided oral testimony at a public hearing. We supported the extension of that program to help DC ratepayers, and we also said there should be a sustainable funding source. As a result of OPC's advocacy, that program has been extended, and DC Water has said they're looking at making it more permanent.
That's great. So OPC is making a difference.
Yes, we are.
You are listening to OPC Radio Connect. I am Sandra Matavu-Fry, People's Counsel for the District of Columbia. My guests are Chandler Crumlin, manager of OPC's new Water Service Division, and attorney Grace Soderberg, assistant People's Counsel. We are talking about what's up with water and delving into how OPC is now advocating for DC Water consumers. Educating and informing consumers is a major goal for OPC. We spend hundreds of hours informing consumers about important issues. As we say, OPC is in the neighborhood, attending numerous community events, including ANC and civic association meetings, fairs, block parties during any given year. We also sponsor town halls. These events provide us with an opportunity to educate consumers about their rights, the services OPC provides, and pass along valuable information to help save energy and money and to ensure that you have access to utility discount programs. We invite you to check out our publications, such as a water conservation guide and our water consumer bill of rights on our website, opc-dc.gov. And we keep consumers informed via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please follow DC OPC on social media. Let's hear again from our speakers. One of the hot issues facing DC water consumers was the Clean Rivers Impervious Area Charge, commonly known as CREAC. Now that's a mouthful. Grace, could you explain what is CREAC and why did it become such a bone of contention?
Yes, thank you, Sandra. Yes, let's break it down. So CREAC, as you said, stands for Clean Rivers Impervious Area Charge. So what is an impervious area? So that's, in layman's terms, like the parking lot areas. Those are the areas with paved areas. So those are driveways and other such areas. So let's step back and talk about how CREAC, this charge, came about. So this is to bring in money for the Clean Rivers Project. So since 2009, the CREAC charge has been in place by DC Water. And so the Clean Rivers Project came about because of a federally mandated $2.7 billion consent decree to reduce combined sewer overflow to the district waterways. So under this consent decree, the district and DC Water must reduce 96% of this combined sewer overflow by 2013. So CREAC applies to all district property owners, regardless of whether or not they pay for other water or sewer services. The entities that are exempted from the CREAC charge are the district and some federal public rights of ways. So let's get to this bone of contention, as you said, Sandra. What is this about, right? So when DC Water instituted CREAC in 2009, it was set at a very low rate. And what's happened is that CREAC has risen sharply as the Clean Rivers Project assumed more debt to reach its construction milestones. So the project is currently at a cost of $3.15 billion plus debt service. So let's illustrate what CREAC means for the common person. So in its first decade, CREAC rose by over 1,700%. Or an average annual increase of over 37%. So if we look at a single-family home in a district, on average, let's assume they occupy 1,000 square feet of impervious area. So back in 2019, the monthly fee for that area was $1.24. And then it soared to $25.18 by 2018. And that same home paid $276 for CREAC in 2019. And beyond the common person, let's look at what it means for certain institutions. So DC Water has estimated in 2019, absent any discount, a typical church will spend $16,000 to $35,000 in CREAC, and cemeteries will be charged approximately over $30,000.
No wonder there was such a loud outcry and scream. That's a big difference.
Certainly is, and good thing that OPC now can represent you.
Chandler, there are customer assistance programs to help ratepayers struggling with high water bills, including CREAC. Can you tell us a little about them?
Yes. The Customer Assistance Program, better known as CAP, is a multi-level program which allows consumers to save money on their water bills. CAP is designed to offset fees associated with CREAC. There are multiple levels of cap depending on the eligibility. Cap 1 is the first tier of the program with an average savings of around $65 per month. The next tier is Cap 2, which provides a monthly average savings of around $45 a month. Cap 3 is the last tier of the program, which saves consumers 75% on their CREAC fee, which averages out to be $15 a month. The cap is a benefit for those consumers who feel the burden of paying water bills they cannot afford. It is vital that eligible consumers apply for assistance to lower their bills. So far, participation in the from residential consumers has been better than last year. It was extremely low last year, but it has increased this year. But for the nonprofits that are included in this program as well, that is even lower in the nonprofit arena. Eligible consumers need to apply because if no one applies, eventually the funds will shrink while the cost for the CREAC fee will continually go up over the coming years.
Do you have a sense of why the participation level is so low? Although I do, I'll offer a caveat that that's a problem that we have in the other rate relief and discount programs for the other utilities, like the RAD and the RES program.
Yes.
Do you have a sense of what drives that?
Well, I had a chance to reach out to a nonprofit last week, well, a couple of nonprofits, because I wanted to see what the issue was. One of the issues that has been explained is that the application process is quite arduous and tedious for a nonprofit, that they have to supply the last time they filed to be a nonprofit up-to-date files. And they also have to prove that CREAC is a economic burden to their organization. Another piece of frustration comes in the fact that there is no finite ratio to say if I will get relief when I apply for CREAC. Much different from the other programs in the district, such as RAD for electric or the gas reduction program, is that you know your income qualifications, but with this CREAC for nonprofit, there's no necessarily income qualification. So that's another part that is really hindering some of our nonprofits from applying, because they want to know, if I make this much, what is my dollar amount threshold that I need to get so I can get some relief for CREAC?
And I assume that communication is also a factor. Getting the word out. Do people and these nonprofits are they even aware that this program and opportunity exists?
Yes. Yes, we are definitely hitting the ground. We're doing our community outreach on our end. And so we're marketing the program to our consumers, nonprofits and residentials, to let them know that this money is out here. Please take advantage of it.
I've also seen DC Water has pretty much an uptick in their communication and outreach. That's a good thing. Yes,
definitely. I've heard some commercials on the radio about the program, and I've also seen some news stories as well. So the word is getting out there.
Okay, that's great. Where can listeners get information about CREAC relief?
I'm glad you asked. The CAP application process is different from CAP 2 and CAP 3. Eligible CAP 1 consumers can apply for assistance with DC Water, Pepco, and Washington Gas simultaneously. The Department of Energy administers the program, and anyone who is interested can call 311 to find out more information and schedule an appointment to see if they are eligible. We want our consumers to be ready when they apply for the program. Residential consumers will need to provide a photo identification, proof of income, which can be their most recent pay stub, most recent DC and their most recent DC water bill. Nonprofit consumers will need to provide their annual revenue after expenses, their most recent exempt property use report, and the number of equivalent residential units, which is essentially an ERU, and that's how they're billed for the CREAC. Consumers can also verify the eligibility on DOEE's website, download the application, and apply by either mailing the application to 1200 First Street, Northeast, 5th floor, Washington, D.C. 20002, or emailing the application to creac.residential@dc.gov.
Grace and Chandler, what is the takeaway that you would like to give to DC Water consumers? What should they do? What's the message going forward?
I would definitely say be active. There is so much that I've learned from coming on at OPC about water issues. And I'll be honest and say I never looked at my water bill before I started. And now I check my water bill each month. And we've even started conserving water inside our home, something that wasn't a high priority before. So I would say be active. And so what I mean by be active is take an active step in conservation, looking at your bill, and if there are programs out there, taking advantage of the programs that are available to us.
Grace, do you have any words of wisdom?
Yes. Use OPC. We're your statutory advocate. Look at our website. Look at our resources. We provide a lot of educational resources. All these matters discussed, our Consumer Bill of Rights, conservation, and also the process for how to help you going forward if you do have a dispute. Because as we've said, we're your utility lawyer, we're your zealous advocate. You can get in touch with our consumer specialists, and they will help you with your case. And if it does go forward into a more formal place, I will be there for you as your attorney, as your utility advocate.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we at OPC, we will have town halls. And again, if you have an ANC or civic association that you would like us to attend, please let us know.
And I also want to speak to consumers right now and say and implore them, if they need to reach out to OPC, please reach out to us sooner rather than later. If you're in danger of being disconnected, please reach out to us prior to disconnection. It's much easier to keep a service on if the water service is still on versus having the service restored once it's been disconnected. So please reach out to us as soon as you can, that we want to help resolve your issue.
Great. Thank you very much. We are ready to close out this edition of OPC Radio Connect. I'd like to thank Chandler Crumblin and Grace Soderberg for educating our listeners about OPC's new water service division and how we are advocating for DC water consumers. But before I leave, it's important to note that DC Water and OPC are working together and collaborating in many different ways to ensure that the system is working. We're trying to identify, some of the systemic problems that are occurring. I didn't ask, but do you see trends coming up?
Yes, just reviewing the complaints that we receive from our consumers, I do see trends that the majority of our complaints come from wards 4, 5, 7, and 8. And in those wards, our highest complaint numbers surrounds disconnections. Typically consumers that are disconnected or consumers who are about to be disconnected because they have a disconnection notice. So again, those are those consumers that should reach out to us. Our next issue, and this will be the last issue, is our payment issues. And this encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses affordability. It encompasses consumers that may have just fallen behind on their water bill and need to get assistance just to help catch them up. And also, it can be about consumers that need an installment plan to help them spread out that payment. One of the issues that we're working on right now is we're helping out a Ward 7 consumer who received a $4,000 bill for 2 months. We don't believe this bill is right, but for the time being, we are getting this consumer an installment plan. Their original installment plan was for 3 months for $4,000, which is really atrocious. So right now, we're going to get that extended and spread that out a little bit longer and come out victorious for this consumer.
That's an important factor because frequently consumers will agree to an installment plan that they really can't afford and ultimately end up where they were in the beginning with a disconnection.
Yes.
We hope that you will join us for future podcasts when we cover a wide variety of topics relating to utility service, energy, climate change, among other issues. And most importantly, make all aware that OPC can help when you have a problem with your utilities. One thing that I would also like to say, if there is a subject matter that you would like us to discuss, please contact us. We welcome your feedback on our podcast. Email us at info@opc-dc.gov. Contact us through Facebook at DC People's Council, on Twitter at DCOPC, or give us a call at 202-727-3071. That's 202-727-3071. Also, check out our website at opc-dc.gov. Sign up at opc-dc.gov for our monthly newsletter, The OPC Connection, and get useful information. Until next time, I am People's Counsel, Sandra Matavu Fry, and you've been listening to OPC Radio Connect on DC Radio.
You've been listening to an encore episode of this program. The views and opinions on this program were solely those of the host and their guests and do not express the views or opinions of the DC Office of Cable Television, Film, Music, and Entertainment. For more information about our programs, visit dcradio.gov.